Well, Syria's main opposition group, the Syrian National Coalition, says that it is pulling out of a series of international gatherings looking to resolve the deadly civil conflict. The group will skip the Friends of Syria meeting in Rome, as well as scheduled talks in Russia and the United States over what it sees as a lack of international condemnation of the Assad regime. Well, let's talk now to Ammar Waqqaf. He's a member of the Syrian Social Club, a group that is supporting reforms in the country. Sir, thank you so much for joining us. Just how significant is the opposition's decision to seemingly turn its back on the international community regarding the peace process in Syria?
Well, we need to understand how those people operate. Probably they are a bit frustrated that what they are being told now is that they should have a sort of or contribute to a political solution, rather than they are going to be heavily armed in order to defeat the Syrian government. They do not want to have any dialogue with the Syrian government because all their strategy is based, in a sense, on the Syrian government falling and them coming as a substitute. They do not have a lot of authority on the ground. The authority is for the rebels rather than the political elite that are called the National Council, or the National Coalition. So all they're interested in is for the government to fall. So probably they're trying to flex their muscles a little bit now. They're interested in negotiating with the Syrian government rather than having any dialogue, which probably explains also the other part of their announcement yesterday, that they are going to go for the establishment or the formation of a government that would take control of the liberated sort of areas.
Right, and of course they've even announced they'll be selecting a prime minister on the 2nd of March, I believe I read. But you say that they're simply trying to flex their muscle here, but at the same time, by boycotting this Friends of Syria meeting, where most of the foreign supporters of the rebels will be gathered, aren't these groups leaving themselves internationally isolated at a time where they really need the international support the most?
Well, it's a sort of mutual dependency as they see it, probably. They know that the Western societies or Western countries have invested a lot in them, both in money and time and so on, in organizing them. And they think that they could probably make a stand here with regards to what they see is their own policy. This is a bit funny because now, if they choose to get out of this sort of international Friends of Syria meeting, then the Western communities really will have no leverage whatsoever on the Syrian crisis. And, it's a bit funny what is happening at the moment, but let's just wait and see.
And I'm just curious how you sort of see the developments on the ground in Syria these days. I mean, what started off as essentially a conflict has really developed in very unusual ways. We've seen, for example, the deadly blast in Damascus just a few days ago. How do you see sort of the evolution of the various opposition groups on the ground and what's actually going on there?
Well, our perception of the conflict in Syria is that the armed sort of aspect of the uprising in Syria, or the conflict in Syria, was pretty much from the very beginning. In order only to steer the people, the first objective, or the main objective at the very beginning, was to inflict casualties and force the army to retaliate in such a way that people get agitated more and people go to the streets more. This is our perception of the matter. Now, obviously, it has turned into a full-fledged regional conflict. Jabhat al-Nusra, which is part of Al-Qaeda, have always had certain ideology that the countries that surround Israel should be turned into a base for jihadist operations into Palestine in order to achieve what they think they could, which is to liberate Palestine from the Israelis. Now, Ayman al-Zawahiri, the chief of Al-Qaeda, issued a video in July 2011, only 4 months into the Syrian crisis, calling for jihad in Syria in order to achieve this, pretty much this ideological objective. And now the Syrians are being, torn between too many armed rebel groups, and no one really knows how to get away from it or get out of it.
And very, very briefly, the opposition is, of course, blaming the Russian government for what it calls supporting and supplying arms to President Bashar al-Assad. Do you think that criticism is fair? I mean, we have also heard reports of rebels getting heavy weapons from other foreign countries abroad, the Western countries, for example.
Well, they want to tell, the faction of Syrians who oppose President Assad and who oppose the Syrian government that if it wasn't for the foreign intervention of the likes of Russia, China, or Iran, the Syrian government wouldn't have made it on its feet so far, thus ignoring that there are millions and millions of people in Syria who actually chose not to go on with this uprising and chose to support the government, whether they approve of the government efficiency or not. So this is only to reiterate their narrative of saying all the Syrian people want to get rid of the Syrian government, and it is because of the outside factions that the Syrian government is standing on its feet, which is definitely not true.
All right, well, thank you so much. Ammar Waqqaf is a member of the Syrian Social Club, a group supporting reforms in that country.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right.